Peace, everybody. For the month of November 2021, we have a zine out with SAVIE OTR featuring Merch, Lab Rat, Ruettes, Too Much, Leech, Yamo, and Dr. Dax. The zine is only available through our Patreon and documents SAVIE's graffiti from trains to the high spots he's well known for. As many of you know, we've used all of our Patreon proceeds to help out people within our scene and communities in need. People who aren't rich, are in need of help, and are near and dear to our community. The bank was going to repo Charlie the Hustler's RV, so we paid off Charlie's debt to the bank so they didn't repo his home and make him homeless. Bat was arrested and acquired legal fees, so we paid Bat's legal fees and sent Bat zines to everybody who donated. We helped pay off the last of Hurt's restitution money so his 11-year-long parole could come to an end, using a print of Hurt's day in court to raise money for that. We donated 6,000 meals to the LA Regional Food Bank and sent Haler patches to everybody who donated. And most recently, we held a food drive in New York at Tompkins Square Park, handing out plant-based meals to the community, and sent out Rebo LNE zines to everybody who donated. That's what we've done with all of our Patreon proceeds. The link to our Patreon is in our Instagram bio, website, and description of this episode, and the SAVIE OTR zines are only available through our Patreon. Peace and love to everybody who listens and everybody who supports us and helps make everything I just named possible. It's been nothing short of an honor and a blessing for us to be able to use this platform as a vehicle to helping out people who have helped us out when we needed it the most, as well as communities in need. So enjoy the episode. Peace. Yo, Lunch.
Yo, what up?
Thank you so much, bro. We just drove across the country to be here, and we're just super happy to be here. And this place is pretty crazy. Like I was telling you, it'd be like a fucking fortune to have a place this big in New York for anything.
Yeah.
You literally have to be like a millionaire. Like, not even kidding. But yeah, so I was just doing some research on Seattle, and I saw that the budget for the police here in 2020 was $410 million. But I don't really see that many cops around.
No.
I didn't really see I think I saw like 3. And in New York, like every 10 minutes you see a cop. Do you know what the deal is for the punishment for graff here?
I mean, right now, I don't think there's much going on if you get wrapped up. Like, I think, from what I know, I mean, I was painting a little bit during COVID, and I wouldn't say I, like, got caught, but they would definitely see you and just, like, drive off, keep it moving, you know?
Yeah.
Because, like, at that point, it's like, I mean, the cops just have their hands full right now. They're like, I mean, you're getting calls fucking all day long, car break-ins, all that shit, like property crimes. So they're just, I think they also got rid of the graffiti cop, from what I know. There used to be one.
Well, like a vandal squad?
Yeah, just one guy.
One guy?
Yeah, Chris Young.
That's pretty rowdy. One guy. The graph scene here is, I mean, I'm here during during.
He knew a lot of shit, but he's like, I don't know, he's fucking, what would I say? He's fucking like, he never really did shit. He would like drop his card off to people. He would just fuck with people kind of. And he would like take people in. But I know like in the late 90s, like early 2000s, like Seattle was pretty buck like with arresting people. Like you would get a year. Like some of the older like BTM dudes, like I know they caught crazy cases. But I mean for right now, I know people have been caught and it's just like,
yeah, I heard. I saw in some interviews saying how like if you get caught in Seattle, first time can be a felony. This is a super old interview. It's a graph interview, and I just remember being like, "Damn, yo, that's the place where you do not want to get bagged up. You get caught one time, you get a felony." But then I come here and I see barely any cops, and I see mad graph. Yo, like I mean, I might be biased, but like because I'm so used to New York, but I think that this place straight up might have more graph than New York.
It's
crushed, bro.
Yeah.
And the highways are crushed too.
Yeah, they're just like, they just put it on the back burner. And like, I mean, they're starting to buff a little bit of stuff again. But it's just like, it basically just got out of control like through COVID and then all the protests here, you know, that were going on with like the stuff on like CHOP is what they were calling it. And like that whole thing, like they just like not doing really shit about it right now.
Wait, what's CHOP?
CHOP was like the zone. It was like a no police zone, I guess, or what they call it, an autonomous zone, where the cops, they took over the police station, They like kicked the cops out. And
Who did, like the civilians?
Yeah, like I don't know really if it was like BLM and then trying to think of like it was just like the people basically when like all the protests were going on for George Floyd. They basically just like took over and like made their own barriers. During the day, it was kind of like some Burning Man shit, you know? There's people kicking it, tents, like hanging out in the park, like on Capitol Hill. But at night, it got kind of weird. Like there was dudes walking around with assault rifles, and there was like Proud Boys walking around with guns, like, and we were up there like every night for a while, just having big ass bonfires.
Really?
Just like it was wild though. Like a bunch of homies came through like during that time, and like people were just like painting the police station and fucking kicked the cops out.
And nothing would happen.
Nothing happened. The cops are all sitting at a park like a mile away, just deep, like the whole police force just sitting there.
Yeah, bro. This place seems pretty unhinged. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, just like our GPS barely knows how to take us around, and there's so much tent city. There's so much tent city.
Yeah.
Like we were just driving around the highways and just seeing all the graph, and on the sides of them, there's just legit neighborhoods, and then next to the neighborhoods, piles and piles of trash.
Yeah, you go under the freeway, man. Like over here, like I-5, and it's fucking insane. Like straight shanty town.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they just build their own shit, you know? They'll have, like, a deck, a fucking window, like, built out of wood, like, full-on houses.
Yeah. Has it always been like that?
No, I mean, that area, like, there's always... I mean, I haven't only been in Seattle 6 years, so I can't really speak on, like, what it used to be like.
Yeah.
But, I mean, these days, like, because I've lived in, like, a lot of different neighborhoods here, and just seeing it, like, you kind of see the decline of, like... I mean, they're gentrifying things, like, really fast. Like, here's, like, crazy. You know, they'll knock down a whole block and build new shit, like, in less than a year. It'll be a whole new block, new commercial buildings, like, all this shit. But the homeless shit is, like, going off still.
Is there some type of, like, programs for the homeless going on? Because, like, it seems like these dudes have, like, brand new, like, Mermont tents, you know what I mean? Like, are they, like, what's going on with that?
I mean, they might. I know in Portland that... if you burn your tent or if your tent catches on fire, that they'll give you a new tent, or they'll give you like a voucher for a new tent.
No way.
So fools on the freeway are just burning tents, like lighting their tents up when they're done with them. So I don't really know what the like program is. Like, I don't know too much about it, but I just know, like, I mean, Seattle's one of those places, like a liberal city. So like San Francisco, Seattle, like, you know, those Portland's like that. So like that's where you get kind of like the crazy amount of like homeless people come here, because it's like easy. You can live in your car here. Like no one's gonna fuck with you.
Yeah, we were just at some parking lot, and right outside of it there was a whole village of people living out of their cars, living out of their RVs, and it was very clear that they had been there for a minute. They had whole things set up. Like I saw people with used bookshelves just placed right outside of their car so they can use it. And it was like a neighborhood.
Yeah.
It was literally
That's
like
exactly
a neighborhood.
What it is. It's full on, like, they'll just pick a zone and, like, set up. And you're just basically till they get kicked out. But they don't really get kicked out. Like, they kind of have to clean it up, I guess, is, like, kind of what happens. Or the city comes in and cleans it, gets all the trash, all the needles, all the shit out. And then they kind of just move to the next zone. And you're just like, all right, fucking, you know, you just, I mean... a lot of it's in the industrial areas, and like, but like you'll see it in straight up neighborhoods.
Do you think they're ever gonna push them completely out with like all this gentrifying going on? Like, you know, as the buildings get closer to where they're staying, like, do you think they're just gonna push them out of Seattle completely? Because it seems like I
don't think so anytime soon. I mean, I think just in the United States as a whole, the homeless problem has gotten like out of control, because obviously like cost of living's going up. Mental health, there's way more mental health issues, I feel like, you know. Like you always saw, you know, there's people that have drug problems and that are living on the street and have mental health issues, but I feel like that has gone, like, I don't know if it's like certain drugs, like meth particularly, that's like putting people kind of like over the edge, but shit is like fucking going crazy, you know?
No, it's absolutely going crazy. And one of the things too is, like, you know, in New York, we think the people who live in New York think that New York has a homelessness problem, which of course, like, it does to an extent, but not even close to here. Not even close.
Yeah.
Like, That's all I can say about that. Is not even close. Here, I noticed some of the tents that they put. They're not even attempting to put them in like say that I'm gonna set up a tent. I'm gonna try to set it up in a place where like not that many people see me. Maybe in the back behind a building.
Yeah.
There's tents like straight up in the middle of the sidewalk, like taking up the entire sidewalk so that you couldn't walk. That's how you know it's really crazy. Like you could people just put them everywhere. Like that's like kind of accepted here. I noticed.
I think another thing during COVID, they got rid of this parking law that was like 72 hours. And I think that was like a big thing that was going on, is that you could just park wherever and not get towed. Like you could stay somewhere for weeks. And I think they got rid of that, but I don't think they're allowed to just go tow. If someone's living in an RV, that they can just tow it, you know?
They're not allowed to tow it.
Like even if the person has like, there was a guy I read about in the paper that had like $17,000 in tickets, and he's just still chilling, you know, like in his RV, like he didn't care. But it's like, I don't think they can really do anything, because that's what I'm saying, like in a liberal city, they have rights, which they should in a sense, but they're also like, there's not really like programs. Like during COVID, they closed down all like the shelters, which I mean, I don't think those were really like utilized as much. I mean, they have stuff like, I guess, like homeless shelters here, but not to the extent that they should, you know? Like, and we did see it a little bit, like when they had to put people in hotels. Like I think, you know, here in like San Francisco, I know they like had to put people up when like the first lockdown happened. So you know it's possible. You're like, they could attempt to do something about this, but they're not. And then like, I mean, I don't really know, like, you know, people were getting unemployment. They might still be. I don't really know what's going on with that, but like that was a factor, that people were just like stacking up too. And then, you know, you're not like, now I think the rent or the eviction moratorium or whatever that's called is up. So like people are getting kicked out. But I don't know. Some of this just seemed like it's like if you let it go, they'll come, you know? And that's
no, absolutely.
That's kind of like what seemed to happen. And it's like, but I think it's like maybe it's just the West Coast, but it's like going on everywhere.
No, yeah. Was it like this before COVID? Like the tent city?
Not as bad. Like, you know, there would be zones. Like always in Seattle under the freeway, there's been a zone like they call it the jungle. And it's just like, you know, people would be posted down there. They'd build little houses and fucking live down there. But that was out of the way, like you're saying. Like, you would have to go there to kind of like see the shit. And now it's just like wherever you want.
Yeah, no, it's pretty nuts, yo. I was in SF skating like a few years ago. I think it was 2-3 years ago, and that homeless population was pretty all over the place. But the thing that like struck me here, like I told you, was the tents. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen this many. And the thing is, like, I like understand, like, you know, there's people have rights and this and that, but there also is like a sense of abuse. I feel like there's a sense where like, all right, you got rights, but now you're really forcing it.
Yeah.
In terms of like, if you're thinking about like government programs and them supplying you with bread, like if they give you like 10 racks, but then they're not allowed to tow you. This is some crazy shit, bro. Yeah, like you can just park your car anywhere and they're not allowed to tow you, but then also they give you 10 racks. Yeah. It's I don't know, it's nuts, yo.
It's like I was saying, it's like there should be programs, and like I don't think they can just like, they should, if someone's living somewhere, just like be able to like kick them out outright. But like it sucks in the sense of like, you know, you deal with this shit like even just as someone living here paying rent, like everyone's getting their fucking cars stolen, you're getting your car broken into every day, and it's like fuck, like, and you kind of know, like, it's like, oh, it's these dudes probably that are like right there, you know, doing the shit. Like someone on my old car fucking drilled a hole in my gas tank and stole a little bit of gas. Like I was already on empty.
That is crazy.
I went to the gas station the next day and the shit was just dumping out. I was like, what the fuck? But yeah, they fucking drilled a hole. Like one spark they could have blown up.
Yeah, they could have blown the fuck up.
Yeah, they drilled it fucking.
It's actually crazy that they didn't, if you think about it.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck? But like just for gas. Like, I mean, what is gas? Like a gallon of gas? It's kind of expensive now, $4.50 or some shit. But for a gallon of gas, you're gonna like risk your life. You know, it's just
what I've noticed in New York is like mostly the crime increased. You know what I mean? Like I don't really know. They don't want like a visual representation of like homelessness. I feel like in New York, because it's like they don't want that aesthetic. You know, of like people just sleeping on tents in the street. But I definitely noticed like the crime, especially like on the subway, going up. But a big part of it is like during the pandemic, they shut down the subways at night, and a lot of the homeless people sleep on the trains. Yeah. So you did see like a influx of people just migrating to the streets. You know what I mean? I remember by like LES skate park, there was like across the street, all those people just like out of nowhere. You know what I mean? And it's like, I feel.
Yeah, they have to go somewhere, man.
It's hard to say like let's get down to the root of the problem. You know what I mean? Like it probably goes back to what you were saying about like mental health and like giving opportunities, but like, what do you do when there's like thousands of people that like don't know what to do anymore? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like they've essentially in a way like given up.
Yeah, there's
it's pretty
people
sad.
Are lost in this society. Like that's kind of what you're dealing with now. It's like, I mean, we're seeing it just like mental health in general is just fucking through the roof. Like suicide, depression, all that shit is, I mean, substance abuse, all that shit is like existing. I mean, it's always been around, but it's like really bad now. And it's, I mean, it's a factor of all those things. But also you're like looking at like, you know, they had it was kind of interesting with the whole thing here with the defund the police and like that autonomous zone is like these people were like, you know, they're normal kind of like yuppie people that were saying defund the police. And the cops kind of just took a back burner to everything. Like they wouldn't even respond to like calls, you know, like if you were calling the cops like, oh, someone fucking broke into my house, they're not coming.
For real.
So we like got to see kind of what that happened, like, or like what came with that. And then these people are like, oh no, we want the police again. They're basically like flipping it, you know, they're like, we want the police back, but defund them. I don't know, which I mean, I fucking don't like the police, but in a sense, like I think there was talk about like creating kind of like a new version of the police that are like more, they like help with mental health problems.
Yeah, no, yeah.
And like that's a really good idea. Like having someone that specializes in it, because like what happens, like even if you take them to jail, you know, someone like goes to jail for some petty shit, like breaking a window and stealing a shit out of a car, you're not like taking care of any problems, you know. You're just like putting them through, and it costs a lot of money for the city to put them through a system, you know. So I don't really know what the like solution is, and it's.
So they defunded. Did they actually defund the police in Seattle? And also, so you know, the protests happened. They defunded it, and then they made an autonomous zone where cops just essentially weren't existing or weren't allowed. And then they took over the police station, and then they stopped responding to calls. Like, is that what happened?
It kind of happened like all at once. It was like, I mean, the autonomous zone thing just kind of started up, and it was like in the news as like some like Antifa shit, you know, like, and people were like calling me like, "What's up in Seattle?" And it wasn't like, I mean, it was kind of crazy. Like when you think about it now, like we're like, oh, that shit was pretty buck, you know, like dudes walking around with assault rifles. There was like some local rapper guy that they were calling a warlord, and he was like walking around like with like a crew of dudes with assault rifles like every night, like patrolling. And I don't know, the shit was like crazy. It was just the weirdest time. Like you're like, what is going on? But I was kind of like, I mean, the protest was a good thing. Like we saw good things come out of it, but like it was just funny. Like in somewhere like Seattle's like pretty safe city, and like you saw kind of like once they like opened the floodgates, like crime just was like crazy here. Like not like maybe violent crime went up, but like mostly just property crimes. So you're seeing all the graffiti, you know, that's like just everywhere, like all that shit. It was good for that. You're like, oh, I can go paint hella graffiti and like no one's gonna care. But
I'm just thinking about if they were to do some autonomous zone, no cops, no answering calls, shit in New York, what the fuck would happen? It would get so bucked so fast. Like, yeah, like, you know, New York doesn't have that homelessness problem to the extent that Seattle does, but like, we don't have a shortage of people who have mental health problems who are on the MTA every single day. Like, yo, people legit will be sitting on the train and some dude will just come up to them and start raping them straight up, like on the MTA, like every single day. Yeah. Or like you'll be at an ATM and some dude will just come up from behind you with a hatchet and chop you. Yeah. So if there was no cops, dude, I don't know what would happen, honestly.
That's the thing. You need to have a solution for, like, it's like, I think you should change the way, like, police basically, like, are trained and, like, what their purpose is. Because their purpose, like, now is, like, they just kind of, like, rack up money. It's, like, a money thing, you know?
Well, yeah, $410 million.
Yeah.
You're, like, And I think there was only like, I think I saw there was no more than 2,000 cops in Seattle.
Yeah.
And 410 million. So aside from paying all of them, where is that money going, bro? It's going somewhere. Like someone is racketeering at the top mad hard.
Yeah.
And you know what it is? Like everybody who I talk to on this show and just in general, they all say the same shit. Like, we need like there needs to be some sort of solution, a change in like shifting it from this to that. And there's a lot of abusive, like everybody agrees.
Yeah.
And then like we're legit not able to do anything about it. Like we live in this so-called democracy, but we're not able to. Like if everyone agrees on this, why is there not some?
It's a reactive solution instead of a proactive. You know, they're like reacting. Like when shit popped off here, they're like, okay, like the mayor I think was like behind kind of the like defunding or like taking out some of the programs like within the police. Like she was down with it, and like so they're like reacting because they're like the people here are pissed. Like we got to do something. But then it kind of like calmed down, and now like I don't know what the fuck's going on. You know, I'm not like the most well-read person on like I try to kind of stay out of that stuff, and I'm just live my life. But like I mean, I deal with it as like someone that lives in the city. You know, you're dealing with crazy shit going on all the time. You know.
Yeah, I know that this year is the year that they had the most violent crime in Seattle, and it's I know they stopped prosecute not only like the police, but also in the courts. I know they stopped prosecuting people. And, if you take away... There are people in this world who, if you take away punishment and like, there's no... The only reason that they're not doing buck shit is because of punishment. Like, there are people, it's like... Not that, like, there's a lot, but there, like, even just a small percentage can make a ill difference. It's like one writer could do, like, 200 hollows in one night. Yeah. There doesn't have to be a ton of them. Like, for a small town, 200 hollows in one night, like... You would realize it right away, but when that 200 hollows isn't hollows and it's like stabbing people in the face, you're like, yo, what the fuck is happening? Like, this is crazy. So what do you think that the police are necessary in society? Like, to an extent, what would happen to public safety if there wasn't? Or what do you think about that? Which is funny because
I think
yeah, no, go ahead, bro.
I think like they serve a purpose in a sense, you know, that like they're there to like, I mean, fight crime, whatever that is, you know. That's what they're there for. And I think like if they got rid of them, we would be fucked for a while. So it's like I mean it's like it's kind of one or the other. It's like they're either just putting a shitload of people in jail and prison for like dumb drug offenses, or they're like not doing anything. So it just needs to be like the whole society needs to be restructured.
It literally needs to be restructured.
Yeah, but it's, I mean, like I said, it's kind of like they react to like, they're like, oh, we're going to do this now. But like nothing really sticks. Like you just see it and it's like, I mean, like I lived in the Tenderloin like the whole time I lived in San Francisco. And that place is like structured like it's where you go to buy drugs. If you get out of prison in California or like Northern California, like San Quentin, they'll give you housing vouchers to go stay in the single room occupancy homes in the Tenderloin. So they basically get out of prison, they give someone a housing voucher to go to like the most drug infested neighborhood in San Francisco and go live there. And it's like, what the fuck is that? Like you're basically just create the revolving door of prison, you know, like you're gonna go back. So, I mean, that was a good thing with the COVID though, is they did let a lot of people out of jail that were just in jail for bullshit, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really think like jail's the answer. Jail doesn't do anything. But I mean, these like state-funded rehabs and shit don't really do much either. Like, or the mental health services. Like, if you want, like I tried. I don't like have health insurance, and I was like, oh, I like should like go to therapy, you know, and like the shit that they offer is like brain dead. You're like, this is what you're offering, you know, like. I don't know. It's kind of like, it's just fucked up. You're like, all right, that kind of like goes to show that you can't really get any help. And it's like someone like, you know, like I'm not living on the streets. Like if you come from like living on the streets, how hard it would be to like actually, because that's what people say. Why don't they get a job and then like get a place to live? Like that's like kind of what some people are saying. And it's like, think of how hard that would be. Like if you're living on the streets addicted to drugs or having mental health issues, to like get a fucking apartment and a job and money. Like,
no, it's like pretty much impossible.
Impossible.
Like your cards are already so down stacked, and whether that be by your fault or not, like your cards are down stacked, period. Like aside from how it happened, like your frame of mind is so far removed from being so structured to the point where you can like get a job, save money, sign these papers, find that like you're not gonna do that, bro.
Yeah,
That's not gonna happen. So, but I feel like do you think this is a place where homeless people come to because they know that there's more slack than other places?
yeah, for sure. I think that's like what happens in the small towns in Washington is they tell the people that are homeless there to go to Seattle. Or maybe I've just heard that, but like I think that's real. Like where I grew up in Santa Cruz, California, like that was a thing. I know like in Santa Cruz they used to like drop homeless people off because they had like a lot of rights there, you know, in that town. Very liberal town, like, and so they would like drop them off or give them bus tickets from these like small suburb towns, like go here or go to San Francisco. And I think that's the same thing kind of happens here because they know like you can go to Seattle and probably just get by, like, you know, you can live in an RV or a tent and like you can go like rack or whatever you need to do to,
Can you? How's racking over here, bro?
I mean, I think it's pretty much a free for all. Like,
really?
yeah, I mean, I know, like, I was just in San Francisco and they had the candy bars in 7-Eleven were even locked up. Like, everything's locked. And I seen a dude when I was there go into Walgreens, like, when they were closed, come out with, like, a laundry basket full of shit. And the security guard goes and chases him down. And, like, the security guard gave him, like, the toilet paper. He had, like, a big thing of toilet paper. He let him keep the toilet paper and took the other shit. And the dude's following the security guard with the toilet paper going, like, give me my fucking shit back. Like, just like, you know, like you get caught stealing, you're usually, I'm going to get out of here.
Yeah,
the dude's
yeah.
like trying to go back in the store and get his shit. He's like, that's mine. I'm taking it. You know, I don't know. There's like dudes riding into Walgreens on bikes. But I think it's like that here too. It's like, I don't think anything happens, you know?
That's so wild, yo. Like we went into REI just to get like tents and shit for just like we're gonna be driving all throughout the country.
Yeah.
And we're just not trying to pay for hotels, so we try to get like waterproof tents and just like sleeping bags. We tried sleeping on the way here at some rest stop like outside. We have like these like sleeping mats, and it was just so brick that we just couldn't. So I'm like, yo, I'm gonna get like this crazy North Face thermos sleeping bag so I can so I don't have to pay $100 a night for a hotel, like if I'm gonna be out for like the month and stuff. And like we went into this one across the street from REI, and there was like a sleeping bag for $600, and I'm like, $600, bro. I'm about to just like, you know what I mean, like walk out with this. And then we were like, let's go. They were like, oh, REI has a better selection. So I'm like, okay, let's go to REI. And you probably know the one we're talking about. It has a whole fucking crazy entrance. We go in and way cheaper stuff, right? But like still pretty good quality, but still pretty expensive. Like if you're not a camper and you don't know about that shit, and you see $200 for a sleeping bag, you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So then I'm looking at it and I'm like, yo, like I wonder if you could just like walk out with this. And then I started thinking about like I saw like Arc'teryx jackets and just windbreakers, like stuff that writers would take.
Yeah.
And also I'm thinking about all the Tent City, and I'm like, yo, these Tent City fools probably really rack this shit. And we see this G.I. Joe motherfucker with like an assault rifle, dude, at a tent store.
Yeah.
He has an assault rifle. Yeah.
Yeah.
An assault rifle at a tent store.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, oh, dude, these Tent City dudes and the writers who took all the fucking jackets, like, dude, it's probably mad hard to rack here. I pictured all the graph I saw and all these dudes boosting shit. I'm like, yo, it's probably so hard to rack here. In New York, you're never going to see a dude with an assault rifle for a tent store.
I'm surprised, actually. I don't got that there.
Yeah, I could. Oh, in New York?
Yeah.
Nah, dude, New York, you'd think.
Yeah, you'd think they'd have it, but
You would literally think like there's a Whole Foods downtown that everybody boosts from, like skaters, everybody knows, and there's nothing, and it's been there for years.
yeah, just like still.
Yeah, but then here the REI had a soldier, like it was a soldier. That's like the best way to describe him. He was a soldier outside, and his job is when someone racks something, like do something about it.
Yeah.
Like that's what he's gonna do, or he's just there to intimidate.
Yeah, I think that's probably more what it is. Because, like, I think, I mean, I'm not, like, a crazy, like, I don't rack all crazy, you know, paint and stuff once in a while. But it's, from what I know, like, they can't really do shit. But I think when you get into, like, the higher ticket items, then they can, you know, or they might. But that's, like, what they just kind of have it locked down. They're like, all right, we'll fucking keep an eye on all this shit. And, like, basically, like, no one's getting out with it, you know. But, I mean, people do. But
Yo, I saw some
brazen, you know. They just go in and they're just like, I don't give a fuck. Like taking, like I seen dudes like I mean, they had the looting going on here. Like,
Yeah.
And fools broke into the Arc'teryx store, and rinsed that fucking place. But they couldn't do anything. It was fucking. But then they in Bellevue, Washington, which is like right across the water from here. It's like a more like nicer area. It's where Microsoft and all that shit is. These dudes like went to the mall, or not like. Hella people went to the mall and parked in the parking lot and just looted the mall. It was on the news. They're like filming from the helicopter, and people are just coming out of Macy's like stacks of Jordans, like fucking way up there. And like a month later, they all got wrapped. Like after the fact, they went and like raided them. Some of the people, and like I don't know, they like busted like some girl in the during the looting for like burning cop cars because they like got her with the hand tattoos. That she had. They seen her on camera. So, like, if they want to, they could do something about it. But, like, that kind of shit is just, like, the racking or whatever. Like, that just comes with the territory.
Yeah.
Like, you just got hella people, like, fucking down and out. Like, you're going to get shit stolen.
And a lot of those tents that I saw were nice tents.
Mm-hmm.
They were pretty nice tents. And what do you think? Like, they probably boosted those from REI somehow.
Or they just get them. That's the thing. They might get them through the city,
They were saying that. Like they were saying that, and I didn't believe it. You really think
I know
they get
Portland, I think, has a program like that. But I'm not really sure what they do here. But like, I mean, you'll see, like even like in these like the shanty towns, like, I mean, it's probably stolen, but you'll see like once in a while like a Beamer, like an M3 Beamer with like one wheel just chilling in there, like brand new, that's like stripped down, and no one's like towing. No one's like, oh, that's my Beamer, or like this Beamer is probably stolen. It's just sitting there like next to an RV. Or you'll see, like these, like sometimes they got nice whips in there, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, nicer car than I drive,
Yeah. What's your experience with the law out here in terms of just your graph and getting busted or anything like that?
No problems so far.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like a lot of like close ones, but I've had more problems like with like deranged like homeless people than I have like any issues with the cops. Like, you get chased. When I first visited Seattle, I got in like a sick chase, like the first time, and I thought it was kind of hot here, like after that, but it's really not. I mean, I think it's just like anywhere. It's like if they see you, they might fucking do something, But like as for like if they get calls, about it, like they might drive through the area and like look around, but I haven't had any issues. I haven't really had any encounters like too much with cops out here in general. Like very little like do they even like do anything. They're not very like aggressive, They're just kind of drive. They just kind of show their presence, like, oh, we're here, but they don't really do shit. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that a lot of them were leaving. I saw a lot of cops were leaving, just like on some news website about Seattle, and all that stuff we were talking about. But yeah, man. How did you first get into graffiti?
Shit, fucking. I mean, I've actually been like interested in graffiti since I was really little. Like, I remember going to San Francisco with my dad because he worked there when I was a kid, and like driving on the 280 and seeing rooftops, which I'm assuming now is probably like MSK shit or something. But these giant pieces like on the rooftop, and being like, what is that? Or like, how do they do that? And I forget even what he said. He's like, oh, it's graffiti or whatever. And then I remember like being probably 8, and where I grew up, there's like a piecing spot. It's like a pretty famous piecing spot called the Aptos Tunnels. And me and my friends like walked up this creek one time, like from our neighborhood. Like it was low, so we just walked through the creek, and we like happened into these tunnels, and there's 3 of them in a row, and it was just like crazy ass pieces, like from old Santa Cruz riders, like clowns. I remember there was a guy, Kool-Aid, and I remember that one just because of the word. You're a little kid, and you're like, I can read that. It says Kool-Aid. And then finding that, and I think like after that, I remember like trying to draw graffiti a little bit, and then like just being kind of growing up, like some of my cousins' friends did it, and I remember like seeing them look at flicks. It was just kind of around like me a little bit, and I was like, what's up with that? And then I don't know, like probably like 5th or 6th grade, like started kind of like going with like, I remember like having like a Sharpie, like a Marks a Lot,
Yeah.
And like trying to do little tags on the railroad tracks, because like growing up, like we just hung out on the railroad tracks all the time. Like they go through Santa Cruz, like from one end to the other, and they don't run trains on them anymore, but there used to be freights that ran through there. and there's like piecing spots like all the way down. Like it's pretty much a lot of the graffiti exists kind of just on this one railroad track line. So that's kind of like where I just got into it, like just fucking around on the tracks. And then I used to take the city bus because I went to like continuation school across town. So I'd take the city bus, and then I remember like figuring out like what a scribe was and doing little scribes. And actually the first time I got arrested was for scribing windows, not on the bus, but actually at my elementary school.
What happened?
I went to like a bonfire like the night before, and I stayed in my friend's car because like me growing up, I was always like the youngest, and I always kicked it like with older people, you know. So like they like, oh, we're going to a party. I was probably like 7th grade, I guess, whatever age, 12, 13. And I like stayed in my friend's car after I can't remember if it was a house party or a bonfire. And then like I was at the elementary school that I actually like, went to like prior to that, whatever that was, like 2 years before it, I was there. And I was just there in the morning, and there was like some local writers had like scribes on this like portable that was out in the field, like on the window.
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
mirrored glass. And I had my scribe. I was like hyped on like a Dremel bit or something, and I did scribes, like 3 scribes on it, and then the door swang open, and it's the janitor. Out of the whole school, he's in this cutty. He's probably like in there fucking beating off or something. Who knows, you know?
Yeah.
So then he's like, "Hey," and I start running, and like he's chasing me like through this neighborhood. It's like a normal ass neighborhood at like 8 a.m, and he doesn't have a phone, so he's trying to like flag down people. And I'm just running, but I'm was like a chubby kid. So like eventually I ran out of steam, and I took him to the railroad tracks and make it on the railroad tracks. And like, I'm like walking ahead of him. Like I'm like kind of burned out trying to run. And he's like fucking old. Dude, he's got the back brace thing on for lifting shit. And he's like hobbling behind me. Like, you're going to jail, like all this shit. And I'm fucking running. And like, finally he dips. Like he like realizes like he doesn't have a phone, and he's just following me like in the cut now. So he dips, and so I just turn back, go the other way, and whatever, I go meet up with my buddy, and we're like taking bong rips like by the beach, like in the morning, you know. I meet up with him, the guy whose car I stayed in. We're like hitting the bong, fucking hanging out, and then I get a call from my mom, and she's like, there's like 3 cops at the house. I'm like, what? And I guess what happened is the dude, I don't think he must have, like, there might have been a camera at the school that he watched me walk into the school, because like I had a hood on, and I don't think he saw my face. But whatever, he watched the camera, and then he recognized me and found me in the yearbook. And fucking, I had to go to juvenile hall. And they were trying to give me 2 felonies for a scribe on a window. They were like, well, I did 2 windows, and they were like, it's $1,000 each. So I went to juvenile hall for like a night, and got out, whatever. And then nothing happened. My mom was like, made me do hella shit all summer. She's like, I got to pay like $2,000. So I'm doing all these chores and stuff for her, because she's like thinking she's going to have to pay all this money. And I go to the probation hearing, and like the school never like hit her up, because it was like an old burnt out portable. So nothing ever even happened. And I was like, fuck, I had to do all that shit, you know?
That was the only time you got arrested for graph?
No, that was the first time. And then like a year after that, I got busted again, just like painting in an abandoned house that we used to like kick it at. It was all bad though, because we were in there. This was when we got into kind of like racking shit. So we had like a car there full of paint, and then we had black books, and we're like in there like tagging on the walls, and like there's black books out, and people are just like drinking. There's like 20 kids there, and me and my friend are in the other, it's like these 2 kind of abandoned houses, and we're in the other one, and like all of a sudden we just look out, and there's just 2 cops, and so they're just standing there like, gentlemen. And it was one that like used to fuck with us for skating and shit, so I was like, this fucking guy is an asshole. So then we get out, and like everyone else, like I almost kind of like nothing happened from that really either eventually. So I'm almost glad that as everyone else jumped over a barbed wire fence straight into Poison Oak, and ran in Poison Oak down to the beach and jumped in the water, but they all got fucked like from Poison Oak. They were just dusted like all over their faces, their whole bodies. So I was like, fucking, I ended up getting 50 hours community service, but they just like gave us tickets because they were like, what'd you do? Like, we know you're in there, like. And this was when I was like, you know, and this is the lesson I learned, like, just don't say anything. But like, I was worried they were going to go in there and find these black books, and then it was going to turn into like a whole thing, you know? So we're like, oh, I did this anarchy sign. And my buddy said, oh, I did this little alien face, like Sharpie shit. But there's like paint out, which was funny. It was like, we did this shit with the Sharpie that's like 20 years old, but there's like all this paint. And then they're like, okay, gave us vandalism tickets, but they're like, whose car is this? And it's my friend's brother. So he had to come back. Eventually I called him and he's like, I'm not going back. I was like, dude, they're going to tow the car. You got to come back. And so he came back and the cop put him on the knee, like lifted him up. It was so creepy. Like he put him on his knee, like lifted him off the ground like he was on a horse, like patted him down, and then gave him the paint and the markers back and like let us go. And then I had to do like 50 hours of community service.
It's so weird.
But yeah, other than that, I mean, I've gotten, yeah, it's fucking weird, right? I've gotten busted like in San Francisco, like, I'm not even busted. I've been like in the drunk tank before, like out doing graffiti, and they just like stop you and they're like, oh, like, what are you doing? And then they're like, you're drunk, and they like take you in for the night. But yeah, other than that, like a lot of close, I mean, there's been close calls.
Yeah. Have you ever painted New York?
I went to New York when I was 15, like with my mom, and visited, like, because I had an aunt that lived on the East Coast, and just got to check it out. And I remember like being in the Village and like doing like little marker tags and shit just on my own, skating around. I went to the Brooklyn Banks.
Sick.
Which was like really ill, you know. It's BMXers
Well,
down there.
what year was it?
15, 2000.
Like, was it when they recently, I'm putting in quotes for those people listening, reopened?
It was the first. It was when they had like shit to skate down there, like there was
the
like
flat
a flat
bar,
and
the
all
spine.
That stuff. Yeah. And
Brooklyn Banks is like the best spot ever.
I remember seeing like Billy Rohan, I think,
Sick.
was there.
Yeah.
There was like a few people. And then, yeah, I went there then. And then I went back when I was 20. And, I mean, I did some graffiti, like, but I just partied. I was like, this is when I like got into like partying a lot. So I was just like in the LES, just like partying for like a week. And I spent hella dough. And then I haven't gone back since. But I'm going soon.
Sick. When you going?
Probably like before the winter, hopefully.
Oh, word, yeah. When you're down there, hit us up and shit.
Yeah, I'll be back out there. I need to go. It's just been one of those places that's like, I'm like, I mean, I don't party anymore really, so I could go probably a little easier now. And the other thing I realized is like now people have like, or at least my friends, they have like better places to stay. Like when I would be invited to go before, they're like, yeah, stay behind my couch, you know, like, or like sleep in my bathtub or like some shit. You're like, I don't really want to do that, you know? Mm-hmm. But yeah, New York's really cool. It's just, it's always been one of those places that I'm like, all right, like now I think you can get tickets for pretty cheap, but it always seemed like, I'm like, I'd rather go to like Europe or something than go to New York. Mm-hmm. But I do want to go back, you know, and just kick it for a couple weeks.
How did you get down with GSB crew?
I met Gusto when I was living in San Francisco. So I moved there when I was 17. Like, I was up there a lot. I think I knew some of those dudes. Like, I would spend a lot of time at the Island, which is, like, across from Embarcadero.
Okay.
But I was kind of up in the city, like, pretty frequently. Like, we go to punk shows and shit and, like, hardcore shows. And I would be up there, like, I don't know, like, every weekend. Because I did, like, independent studies during high school, so I didn't really go to school. So I just, like, be up there. And my buddy lived in North Beach, which is, like, Little Italy. And I remember being out there. The first rider I met was this dude, B-Man. He was, like, he's BTM, kind of like neighborhood dude.
Okay.
And I remember like seeing him, like, and it was like some parade, and he's just out eating gelato, just hitting windows or doing streaker tags on windows, just in the middle of the day, like in front of everybody. And he's also like, everyone knows him in that neighborhood, so it was like funny. Like, I'm like, this dude, you know, like that. I remember that was like the first guy I met up there. But yeah, I met Gusto when he moved. He came out from New York. I don't know if he moved back but he showed up and he's like hella cool right away. And he reminded me of like people I grew up with, you know, like kind of like he was a skater dude from Santa Cruz, or like people from Santa Cruz, I guess, that I like. It just reminded me, I was like, this dude's fucking funny. And like right when he showed up, he was like some fight down there, and he had a Giants jersey on, and it got all bloody because these dudes were like fighting, and one of them bleeding all over the place. And then we just like kicked it, and then I think he moved back, and I would just like see him, and then I can't remember, like I just like all of a sudden it was just like those were just my friends. Like it just like happened. I can't even remember like, oh, you're on. I just was like hanging out, and then they're like, yeah, put it up or whatever. But around the same time, I was like MQ put me down with BBB. So that was like all in the same time. So it's blurry, like where it's just like all of a sudden it was just like, which is weird for me, you know, like growing up, like Santa Cruz has a pretty sick graffiti history. Actually, there's like a lot of writers from there, but they all moved away, you know, most of them. So then like getting to San Francisco, and then just like, it's like a small city. So like everyone kind of knows each other, and then you just meet everybody. and all of a sudden it's like those are your friends, and like, I mean,
that video that our primo made is like you, MQ, Darks, Lunch, Gusto. Such a good video.
Yeah, I wish like I was pretty fucked up, I think, when they were filming that, and I wish I like did something better, but I like didn't even like really. I was like still learning how to like do fill-ins, I feel like, at that time, because when I moved to SF, I just like tagged a lot, you know. I was just like into like skating around and like doing tags, like. But it's funny because like when I was younger, I painted more like whatever straight letters and stuff, like actually painted more, and then I got up there and it was just like I was just into tags, you know.
So why did you move to Seattle?
Shit, I had my sister was living here at the time. I visited once, and I was like, San Francisco at that time, like it was really hard to get a spot, like an affordable spot. So I was kind of like my spot. The rent got raised and I couldn't afford to live there. So I was like, all right, I either moved to Oakland. Oakland at the time was like a little more affordable. And then I came up here and visited, and it was just like hell fun. Like it was during the summer though. I came here during the summer and was like, had hella fun for like a week. And I was like, yeah, I'll give it a try, because I had a place to stay right away. But I actually wasn't planning on like staying. I was like looking at moving to Philly just because I'd been there, and I was like, that seems like a cool spot, you know? So I kind of just ended up in Seattle, and then I was like, oh, I'll stay. I went to Europe too, like for the first time right away, like when I got here. So I went here and like chilled for a month, went to Europe for a month, came back, and then was like, fuck, I got to make some money. And like, so then I ended up staying there. I met a girl at the time and like moved in, did all that for 3 years. And then I've just been chilling ever since. I don't know.
How do you deal with the negative aspects that graft brings, like beef and substance abuse, death of friends? I know you've had a number of friends pass.
Oh, yeah.
How do you deal with that?
I mean, the drug thing sucks. Like that's been, I mean, I partied a lot. Like I haven't drank in like 3 years. I mean, I smoke weed or whatever, but that, like the whole drug aspect of graffiti sucks, especially now, just because like with fentanyl and stuff, there's just people dying left and right. But it's just like, I mean, I've had friends pass from a number of things, kind of like a bunch of different stuff, you know, murdered, suicide, like all that. And it's just, I mean, dealing with it is like, I mean, I lost my dad when I was like 13, you know, and that was like, and then I lost a friend that I grew up with right around that time. And I think eventually you have to learn to cope with, like, it's inevitable that you're going to lose people. And I think like within graffiti, you know so many people because of it, you know, or like even people maybe you don't know that well, like there's some connection there. So you, like, it seems like you're like, oh, I'm losing friends left and right. But in the Bay Area, like at that time, there was just people dying like constantly. It's like every couple months, and it's still kind of happening. And I realized actually once I moved to Seattle that like the lifestyle that people are living, I mean, a lot of people have now chilled out, luckily, but like at that time, like it was pretty like it was just a lot of partying and a lot of shit, a lot of drugs, you know. So that like kind of comes with that territory. And then when you go somewhere else, you realize like that's not normal, but like it seems normal. You're like, whatever, we just what we do every night. But I mean, I kind of like have looked at, like, you know, when people pass, like I sit with it for a while. Like I don't know. It's like, it's not to say I'm like numb to it, but I just kind of sit with it. And it's like, you know, you take something, like you lose, it's weird too, because you lose like all these amazing people in your life. And you're like, it's kind of like, I almost think like, I'm like, wherever they're going, like it must be better than here, because there's a lot of good people that you lose. But you also see kind of like, sometimes you can see it, like, it's like they're on the way, you know, like you have friends and you're like, you know, they're living crazy and you're like, fuck, like you kind of like feel it, like, and then it happens and you're like, damn, like I almost could have like predicted that, you know. But
yeah, I was gonna say, like, graffiti is like, it's crazy in that sense, because I remember like growing up in South Brooklyn as like a little kid, I would see like graffiti, you know, like waiting to go on the train for school or whatever, like with my mom, like just looking at this stuff and being like, yo, who is that? Like, what are they doing? They're like some type of like superheroes. Like you have this image of like, you know, like you're idolizing these people. And when you get older and like you, in a way, partake in the scene and see what's going on, it's like, bro, it's like a serious, like these people are really like like in a way suffering, like
Yeah.
you know, it's like it's not all just, you know, superhero shit. It's like it's a big problem in the graffiti scene. Like in my neighborhood, yo, like so many writers passed that were like young kids, you know what I mean? And it's sad, you know, because you could see their talent, you could see like what they're doing on the walls. It's like it's like a cry for help in a way. Like it sucks, bro. It really does.
Yeah, and I think it's like, I mean, I like with graffiti now for me, like I like had the choice to kind of like basically like let it maybe like ruin my life in a sense. Like, I mean, there was a lot of factors in there. It was like partying and then like, but I saw a lot of people that were older. I like was around a lot of older people that like you kind of saw like what happened, you know, like that, like they have graffiti, but they don't have shit, like anything else. Nothing else is going on. It's like kind of that's it. And it's, in a sense, like I always was like inspired by these people that like do really cool shit outside of graffiti and just do graffiti, you know? Like someone that's like, you know, they're like, oh, that dude's a scientist and he does graffiti. Like, I'm like, that's fucking interesting to me, you know? Compared to like someone that, you know, you're like, oh, they just boost and do hella drugs. And it kind of makes sense, you know? It's like, it kind of goes hand in hand with those things. But I've been lucky enough just to like surround myself with like a lot of different types of people. So I've been able to kind of see like, for me, it's like, I'm just like a regular ass dude. Like I haven't done like crazy amounts of graffiti, you know, like travel a little bit and like, I like to do it still. Like, but I'm not like one of these people that's like dedicating like my whole life is not graffiti. Like I'm not out every night. I'm not like, oh, there's that bridge, I gotta like hang off that bridge. Like I like the best nights for me, it's like graffiti has been a lot about friendship for me, you know, like in times like it's like independent in a sense and it's also very social like at the same time. And it's been like those nights when you're just out with your buddies and like someone's like, oh, I got some paint, you know, and you just like hit a wall and you're just laughing or like whatever funny shit's happening. Those are like the times I like look at as like those are the best. Like I don't really like, it's not like, oh, I like painted some crazy spot. I mean, for me, I like just don't paint that crazy. I don't paint really crazy spots. I'm like into like cutty graffiti, kind of like not really piecing, but like I like shit that's just like kind of exists where graffiti like belongs. Like on rail, like kind of how I grew up, like railroad tracks and like seeing like some rusted ass fucking door and you're like, I want to do tags on that. Like hopefully it'll run. Like I like trying to do stuff that maybe will like sit around for a while.
Speaking of like people who do other stuff outside of graph, you know, Nove does like writes books. He has a PhD. He's a professor and all that. I saw in 2014 you were like reading some of his books among other shit. Like
dude, I read all of them.
World Screaming Nove. I know you read just Nove York, Rim by Slave.
Back.
What?
I wish I had all those books, man. I let people borrow them, and now I fucking don't. I want to read them again. You know?
What do you think about those?
They were like amazing at the time. My friend actually, Yezim, R.I.P. He put me on that like that. I knew about that dude because of State Your Name and shit. Yeah. And I like loved his graffiti in that because he like, I mean his throws are cool, but he did those like big. It just was like a big tag.
The big tags,
with
a
stock tip. And I was like, that shit's sick. Just like big ass tags with stock tips. And then my buddy Yezim was like, oh, that guy wrote a book. And I was like, he just didn't seem, you know, like you could see like someone like Espo, you know, like there's people that you could see writing books.
Not him. Like not from the State Your Name.
Yeah.
Like if that's what you think that he
it's
is,
like,
there's no way that
you're like, that dude wrote a book. And then like reading his first book, you know, was like really fun. It was like.
Which was the first one?
The World Screaming Nove.
That's the first one?
Or wait, the one with the yellow, just
written by a slave?
Yeah, that's I read them like maybe in order. Like I feel like I got the other ones when they like maybe had come out. They were like the regular price of a book. Like I forget, I ordered them offline or something. But I think I got all of them after that. And I was like, I'm just trying to, but then I wanted to reread the World Screaming Nove one because that one was like way more intellectual.
I love that one. That's my favorite one.
And it was like,
$2,000.
I almost didn't understand it at the time, but I was like kind of confused by it because I was like, what is going on in this book? You know, like it's like very intense. And then I remember he did a book that was called Alcohol Makes You Invisible.
Invincible, yeah.
And I got it, I think I just downloaded as an audiobook. And that shit was a bugged out book. That one was crazy. Like, I don't know. I like to read. So like, yeah, I'm like, anytime there's like some weird, like obscure shit like that, I'm like, I want to read it. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I wish I had them still because I'd like reread them.
Yeah, the book, The World Screaming Nove, that's easily my favorite one that he did. It's pretty nuts for anyone who hasn't read
That's-
it. Try to get your hands on a copy. I saw that on Amazon now. It's like $2,000.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, fuck, dude. Like,
I asked him about it. I'm like, yo, what's up with that? And he was like, I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
Like, it's not him. It's just some
they're
random.
on eBay for hella money. I mean, that's like with a lot of books, like that random books that people put out. Because I'll try to like buy shit. Like when I see it, I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. And then you have it, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, I remember this dude Scott Bourne. He's a old skater from the '90s, consolidated like.
Sick.
And he wrote some books, and like I bought them like when they came out, and they were really sick books. Like one of them's more like poetry or short stories, and like he lives in Paris now, but like you can't find those books. Like once they've come out, they're not like, oh, they're just available everywhere. So like, yeah, I don't know. Like I'm just interested in shit like that. Like especially when I like that's why it was so obscure. It's like that weird dude from State Your Name that's like talking hella shit wrote a book. You're like, what? Like, no, I like didn't believe my buddy when he told me, because he was like really into reading and writing, Yezim, and he like knew about that shit, and he was like, oh, like I'll let you borrow it, but I think I just bought it. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had read the What Do 1 Million JA Tags Signify, and then he came on the show the first time he came on the show, and the first time I met him, like he shot me a message, and he's like, yo, I'm outside. So I'm like, okay. So I go down, and I'm like, I'm thinking State Your Name, Nov.
Yeah.
I don't know anything else other than State Your Name, Nov. So I go down, and I'm like, well, where is this dude? Like, there's one dude on my block, but that is clearly not him. Like, I know he said he's outside, but that is clearly not him. So let me just call him. So I called him, and I'm like, yo, and I see the dude who is clearly not him answer the phone, and then it's him, and I'm like, yo, what the fuck, son?
You're like, is this the right dude?
Yeah, dude. And then, but anyways, yeah, he brought us his books, and then I was super hyped. He brought us his books, his gifts, and one of them was The World Screaming Nova, which was like the first one I read from them, and like him talking about like Moki G, and like I don't know if you remember, but that's like the character that is essentially him going like who did LSD with the hippies, who realized that he should become a teacher because the teacher is the only job to like teach the disenfranchised youth how to pretty much have a revolution against corporate America, and how he'd rather shoot himself in the face than be part of corporate America. And like I might be like, I'm sorry if you're listening to this, bro, like, and like I'm miswording your book, but like that's just kind of what I got out of it.
Yeah.
And no, it's crazy. What other books do you read?
Fuck, I read the John Joseph ones.
Oh, what?
One of his new ones. He's fucking out of his mind. I love that shit, because I grew up like going to hardcore shows.
Sick.
Like pretty much like pretty young, you know, like I was way into that shit. I would be going to Gilman a lot. And at that time, that was like part of like my graffiti influence too, is like a lot of these dudes that were in bands wrote graffiti at the time in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So like I would go like bands like Ceremony and like my favorite band ever, Never Healed. Shouts out. Yeah, it was just like a cool scene, like, cause like I wasn't straight edge, so like I love straight edge bands though, like Judge, and like there's the bands, you're like, they fucking rip, it's undeniable, you know, and the lyrics, even like the older bands, the older straight edge bands, the lyrics are like more like understandable compared to like maybe like newer bands. So I like loved all that shit, but like all these bands, like none of them were straight edge, but they were hardcore bands, so that was like big for me. So like I of course Cro-Mags is like huge, so I had to get his books. Like I haven't read them all, but like I had the first one, you know.
What was it, Evolution?
Yeah, that one's crazy. Like that one, like I read it twice, pretty like back to back, because I was like, I need to read this again because it's like so like crazy. But then, you know, he's done a lot of like interviews and stuff, obviously. So like you kind of hear like the story, like the same, well, not the same story, but like that guy's got endless stories, but. I mean, I just think like more people should write books.
Oh, absolutely.
Like imagine, I was thinking about this, like imagine like Cap, if he wrote a book about, but not even like about the Style Wars time, but like a Cap book that was like in between then and now. Like what did he do? Like what was Cap up to?
Yeah, like what the fuck is he even up to?
And like MPC, that crew that he was in,
they
had a book. It was more of like a photo book that I saw. And that shit was like, dude, they're like ill metalheads, like from fucking the set or whatever that was, the early 80s, and they're like painting graffiti, but they're all like rockers, you know, and there's photos in there and you're like, dude, this shit is bugged out, like, you know, it looks like the Warriors or something. Like that's the kind of shit like I get way into. I'm like, I would love I mean, you know, like if there's someone did the Cap autobiography, like,
So I would
you
buy
hear
that
shit, you know?
instantly.
like you hear shit, fucking, you're like, or like just anyone, like, I mean, everyone's kind of got interesting stories, especially these dudes that have been going like for that long. Like I would love like to see like a Louis BTM book, you know, like that would be some shit. You'd be like,
Have you ever thought about writing a book?
yeah.
I'm
But
legit writing one right now.
You are?
Yeah, yeah.
I would want to write a book though. I'd want to like I'm like interested in doing things like about other, like someone else, like, cause like I don't know, like me, I'm like pretty like mellow dude. Like I haven't gotten like, you know, there's been crazy shit in my life, but nothing like, I think like book worthy, I guess. But like I would love to like, maybe like that's more journalism though, like where you're like, I mean, you guys interview people. That's why like I'm a fan of the podcast, because I would listen to it and I'm like, finally someone's like doing graffiti interviews that cover shit that's not like, what kind of paint do you like? Like that shit is like, what? You know, you listen to that and you're like, dude, I'm not trying to hear about like fucking, oh, I like the Rusto with the whatever, like fucking, I like Montana. Like Montana sucks. Like we want fucking, I don't know, Kills is good. But like, you know, you don't want to like hear that shit. You're like,
Dude, some people get pissed at us.
yeah.
That like some of the not that like relatively in the ratio, it's not that much, but some people are like, yo, I'm tired of hearing this. The fuck you guys talking about? Like you guys are thinking too much. Like talk about graph.
That's why I told you to interview Rescue. I was like, you got to interview this dude, because like I knew him a little bit in the Bay Area, and he's like always been a cool ass dude. But like I had heard just like through the grapevine that he was like in South America, like hanging out with like possibly like extraterrestrial beings, like just doing crazy shit. And I was like, and then like you guys, you know, had like John Joseph and I was like, damn, they should like do one with Rescue if he's down. And I feel like now, like, I mean, he did that, and like he's like putting himself out there a lot, like, and it's so weird because Rescue, like, I feel like most people, you would see his graffiti, and you're like, oh, it's just this was like a crazy ass bomber, like worldwide bomber, and then like the shit he's into on the side, like, I mean, that's basically what he's into now, like doing all like the bodywork stuff and like
sound
he's
healing.
Like been helping a lot of people out, like people I know, you know, he's like been helping them out, like get sober, and like it's fucking cool. You're like,
it's super cool, and honestly, whatever works, bro. Like I've heard that in his past life he was on some very other shit, and if that can help you get out of it, then like, you know, like more power to you. When you sent me his page, like I remember you were like, you guys should do Rescue, and I go, and I guess it was a video of him, and I'm like, I actually re-looked at the message today, and I'm like, this is Rescue 246.
Yeah,
like
very
I was like, is this a joke? And then I go on his page, and I looked on the tagged, and then I saw it somewhere, and I'm like, bro, it really is.
Yeah.
Like that is actually nuts. It was crazy, yo.
It turned into like an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
It was better than I was like, yo, this shit is good right here. Like, I mean, you guys did two with him.
We did two of them, yeah.
But like, I mean, yeah, his whole like story is just interesting, because I knew him, you know, like we knew each other like in passing or whatever, but like I had just heard like, oh, he's doing that, like this guy's doing this now, and like, you know, you just hear shit and you're like, oh, that sounds crazy, you know. But then like once I saw his like his Instagram thing, I was like, yo, they should do an interview with him, because I mean, like
a lot of writers do a lot of stuff outside of
that's
outside
what I'm
of graph.
saying. That's what is interesting to me, like, because like graffiti's cool, but like it's interesting when these people like they do some like, I don't know, really cool shit, and they're like still trying to go do graffiti. It's such a weird like thing to be into, like especially if you're living like a, you know, a normal life, and then you're like, I want to go do this like weird shit on the side, you know.
I think that whenever they do stuff on the side, they really bring the flavor. Like we were talking to Peter Sutherland, and he's telling us about how when he started doing autograph, like he didn't really know much about graph, but he didn't need to. All he'd have to do is bring a camera. Up comes the writer, and the writer's just going to bring the flavor, and it's immediately going to turn into like this artistic book. Yeah. And I think about the same thing like with like Arab with his paintings, or Jesse Edwards with his paintings, or like or Rescue with his shit. Like if Charlie Hustler, if he does like an Instagram story, it just turns into art immediately. Yeah. Like other people's Instagram stories of them talking, it's like just an Instagram story. His Instagram stories are like legit. It's like a TV show.
Yeah.
Like I want him to post more, because I want to be able to see it.
Like, because Gusto knows him, you know.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
They like have a history, and I remember like getting put on to him, and like, dude, it was like a movie. Like he put his whole shit out there, like the bad, the good, like everything was on there, and you're like watching it, you're like, this fool's like yelling at his neighbors, like blasting Mobb Deep, like throwing shit. Like, I don't know. He was fucking, shit was entertaining, but also, you know, you're like, fuck, like this dude's going through some shit. You know, at the time. But yeah, his shit was great. I was like, damn, that was the first one you did, right?
That was our first episode.
Set it off. Like, but that's why it's interesting to like, I mean, for you guys doing a podcast, like, I love the idea. I'm like into podcasts. I listen to that shit at work all day, you know, like different ones about everything. Cause I'm just like, I want to find out about random shit, you know, like I'm like, you know, I might like one day, like I grew up like in a town where a lot of people surfed, but I never really surfed, but I'm like, I might nerd out on like surfing one day, you know, and be like listening to like some surfing podcasts.
I feel like podcasts are kind of similar to books in a way. You can learn a lot of shit. Like, it's just because it's not an audiobook doesn't really mean anything. It's, you're like sitting in a room of ideas being shared when you're listening to that. You know what I mean? It's like you're there. Like, I listen to like Joe Rogan's show a lot just because of the fact that he has mad random people on.
Yeah, that's
so you end up learning. Like, I'm like, oh well, this guy's like a neuroscientist. Like, I don't know anything about that, but this is probably going to be ill. And then I know they're going to talk about shit that has nothing to do with neuroscience at some point. Like, it's a 3-hour-long podcast, and I'm going to hear what this neuroscientist has to say about like fucking the Gracies fucking people up or some shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's just
you find out about weird shit, and then you're like, oh, I want to like know more. I mean, I will say, like, you listen to too many of them and like you don't really take in all the information compared to like reading a book. But I mean, podcasts are good just because you can be doing something else, like working and like listening to shit. And I'll be like listening like some crazy ones, like cracking up, you know, just like while I'm like up on a ladder at work, just laughing because I'm like, that shit's fucking.
How'd you get into shooting photos?
Photos, like, I feel like I always kind of like took pictures of stuff. Like, I remember going to like punk shows when I was really little, like with my mom's like 35 millimeter and like shooting a roll just at the show of like people circle pitting and shit. And I mean, none of them really turned out. And then I remember like later I got a digital camera, like a Nikon one, like, and I remember trying to shoot skate photos, like just like regular skate photos, but not really knowing like, oh, you need like flashes or like get a fisheye. Like, I just would. And actually, I have some of them. I was able to like track down some old Flickr and like get some of them, and like I actually like some of them, you know. But that was kind of where it started, and then being into graffiti, like I grew up kind of like 12-ounce era.
12-ounce rough, yeah.
So like that was big, you know. You'd go flick, and you couldn't like flick all your own shit, you know, and just put your like. It was like looked down upon to like self-promote like that.
Yeah.
So you would go like find, and that's like where I got into finding Cuddy graffiti, you know, because like I would go find shit like weird tags, and I'm still so into like that's what I'm into. Like I'll go find like some, like I'm not like trying to go in, like I like shit that's kind of out in the open, but it's like Cuddy, you know. You're like, oh, that tag's on that pole, and like people like during 12-ounce days, they used to like take pictures of that kind of stuff, like some old tag. You don't see that kind of shit like on IG, you know. It's like fill-ins, you know,
see like the big shit.
It's like all the big shit. You don't see those like weird, because people, a lot of kids now probably don't know about the writers. Like even in Seattle, like, you'll find, you know, dudes that like were from here, and you'll find the old shit, and you're like, damn, that's sick. Like just some old ass tag, you know. So like that's kind of where I like got into like shooting photos. But then I would always take photos with my phone. Like I have one phone that made it through that has like kind of photos from San Francisco days, like when I first lived there. And I love those photos because it's like an older iPhone. They almost look like a film photo just because it's like the quality's gotten so much better. But I wish like I also like used to make like digital camera little skate videos, because I remember seeing Crooked made a video called Naughty where they like filmed on a digicam, and I was like, oh, that shit's sick. So I was always kind of like just tinkering but never like mastering any of it. And still like that, like photos are like I got into it for a while, like trying to go out and take photos, you know, like with the camera, and you go out, and then it just felt like disingenuous, like, oh, I'm like trying to like, and like I'm not really into like, and I like shooting photos of people on the street if they're like down, you know, they're like, take my photo, or like, you know, they're like down with it, but I'm not into like the like being Cuddy really anymore and like trying to like take street photos. But I feel like a lot of people, you find out about those street photographers and you get like inspired by that. You're like, oh, I want to go like take photos on the street. But so many people, I see people out, you know, doing it constantly, and it's like, I feel like there's not as much characters. There's not like, I mean, there's characters if you want to take photos of like homeless people, you know, there's characters still, but it's just not the same, I think, as like when those like the OG people were doing it, you know. But I still like shooting photos. I just do it like way slower now. Like I always have my camera and I'll just snap photos like when I see one. But a lot of it is like I've just realized with photos, like they matter like after like later in life. You know? Like they take time, especially like with shooting film. Like it takes time. It's like I feel like there's this like you want to get the shit out now, but it's like you should just take photos with your phone if you want to like have it right away. Like and I like the surprise, you know. It's like you shoot the photos and you don't really know. But like that's kind of how like I mean I've always just been into it, but there's been like periods of my life like I wish like when I was like, you know, 17 to 21 I was shooting photos. I had my phone, you know, I'd take photos, but I wish I was like actually shooting photos because that was like the crazy shit. And then now I'm like all chilled out, and I like to take photos though, just like with my friends and like whatever, you know.
Your photos are really good, man. Your photos are really good. Like I don't know if how much you've slowed down or if you ever put out a zine or anything.
Do it. Like I just go like I said, like, and I'm real into like I just keep the film for a while and stack it up, and then I get it processed or like I don't do the darkroom shit. I just like send it, get it processed, and like it's nice to have the surprise once you get it, you know, because I feel like you have expectations if you shoot a roll of film and you're like, there's a sick photo, and you like go develop it right away. You're like, and then it turns out like shit. Those are always the ones you're like, oh, that one's good, and it's never. For me, they're never the good ones. It's always these like weird ones where you just like snapped it, and you're like, huh, like I like that one. I don't know why, but like that's kind of what I'm into, and I'm like, for me, I'm just like, I want to keep doing it. Like, I want to document maybe more graffiti, like not like because I take photos of people painting, like when I'm out painting, like whatever, snap a photo of my buddy doing some shit. But I do want to document like Cuddy graffiti more. That's kind of like what I'm like, oh, like I like this. Like this is like something I'm actually into. And like I don't really have any aspirations of being like a photographer, you know? Like I just want to do it, and like maybe like in 10 years like there'll be some relevance to this, you know?
Yeah.
Cuz I think with like I've lost so much shit like with digital, you know? Computers crashing, never been good at like backing stuff up. And at the time you don't care. You're like, oh, whatever, you know, because you're like in that moment. But then now you're like, fuck, I wish I had that footage, you know, or like those photos.
So I completely agree. If I had every photo that I've ever taken on every phone I've ever had, it would be over.
Yeah, you'd be stoked. You'd just be like, fuck, all right, got like
so many memories.
It's nice to look back, like, because it's like a time period in your life, and like, for me, that's like what I'm into shooting photos of my friends and like. Just moments where I'm like, oh, that was like ill night, whatever. You know, you just like kind of take them and then like wait, you know, 6 months, and then you might get it processed, and then you like see it and you're like, okay. And then like after that, like I just sit on a lot of the stuff, you know. It's just like sitting on a computer, and I like been better about at least like putting the negatives like in binders and shit, so I have them and like backing stuff up. But yeah, I just like. I got like, I don't know, I was like I'm still into it, but like I try, you know, I kind of like attempted like, all right, I'm gonna like shoot photos more often, and I just like none of it like resonated with me. It just felt like weird. I was like, you're like going out and looking for a photo, compared to like, you know, you're just like, oh, there's a, you know, like this is happening in front of me, like I'll take a snapshot, because I take a lot of photos just in my mind, you know, like I'm big on like, I'll see a moment and I'll like not take a photo, but I'll be like, wow, like one of the times I can think of that I didn't have a camera, but like it was like it was after Jade passed away and everyone met up in San Francisco, and like we went out to dinner or something, like a bunch of homies, and then everyone went into the Muni tunnel and like did hollows, like Jade stuff in the Muni tunnel, and like someone had paint that were just starting to hand out like a bunch of cans, and just that like the look of like 15 people just going into the tunnel to like go crush it. And like I went to work the next day, so I got to ride the Muni like through that tunnel and just saw how far everyone went back, because like I didn't go all the way in, and some people went way deep and just were like, they went into the middle and then just did hollows like all the way down, like Jade stuff. And just like that moment I was like, I think someone might have taken a photo, but it just was like one of those like mental things where you're just like, oh, that, you know. And that's like for me, that's kind of like what photos are. They're just like, it's hard to capture that though, you know, like those, it's memories and like night out with like your friends, but like sometimes you can capture it, and it's fun to look at. And like, I don't know, I just like, yeah, I think like with time, like these things might they might like hold a lot more value like later.
No, they absolutely will. I
Yeah.
think it's mad important too. Just like within the graffiti culture, it's been taking photos has been a thing for so long.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of documenting your stuff that no one else will. Even though now obviously it's different and there's straight up.
But I think like the best shit in graffiti probably exists like in someone's shoebox somewhere under a bed or like in a storage unit.
That's
you know?
exactly where it exists.
Like you see the stuff that gets put out and scanned, but like there's dudes that just they're just sitting on like the gold, you know? And that's like, that might just be pictures of graffiti or like, you know, action people
Their
doing
lifestyle.
graffiti,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
lifestyle, like from, you know, you see those old photos like in the 90s, like, and it's just like a different time, you know? Like, and you're like, damn, but you can like see it, like, you can see like the whole picture's there, like the gear, the fucking 40s, the blunts, like all of it's like all there. It's just
the
like,
architecture, how
the
it looked
architecture,
different.
how it looked. And I think like that's a big thing with like the graffiti shit that I like is like a lot of, I think like now with graffiti, because of the like the nice paint and like that you shoot it digital, it looks much more like softer than it used to. Like you see those old flicks and there's like an orange tint on the film, you know, because a lot of it's just like disposable cameras or shitty cameras. There's like an orange tint on the color film, and the graffiti's done with, you know, Rusto and the old Krylon, and it just looks like raw as fuck. You're like, oh, that shit looks amazing, you know?
Another thing with taking photos is so different from like what we're used to is like on Instagram, a lot of people always want to be in the photo. They always want to be like, yo, take a picture of me in front of this or me with this person. If you're taking those photos, you're not in any of them.
Yeah.
So it's like you care less, and like realistically, not that many people care about who shot the photo. They care about what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So
Subject
like
matter, yeah.
Yeah, they care about like what it is. They don't care about like did Lunch shoot this? Did Peter Sutherland shoot this? Like, of course, some people care, but not like the majority. Like the main viewer who's not appreciative of photography as an art and just like looks at it as a general image, it's not thinking about that. So like, I guess it's an art that really involves passion because like people are not gonna. You don't have a signature on that shit.
No.
People are not gonna know that you
I know
shot
might
it and you're
circulate.
not in it.
Yeah, like later, like, you know, the stuff might circulate, or that happens now. There's like old photos, like Dave Schubert, you know, he's got like the golden era of like kind of San Francisco, like a lot of stuff, and like his photos will circulate with like no credit, but you know, like, or if you're in the know, you're like, all right, this guy shot these photos, and he's got so many that probably aren't public, you know. Well, I know he does, but like he's fucking. I remember he had a photo of MQ like painting. And he's like standing across on a truck and he's got Red Wing boots on. And I remember just being like, that photo's like so sick just because it's like the fucking boots are like right there in focus. And then there's a big silver MQ throw up.
So good.
I mean, MQ's like that's someone that's like just, you know, for graffiti. That's like, I had the pleasure of like being friends with him.
Prophet.
And he's like, it's like high art. Like, you know, he used to do these fill-ins. He would just do MQ fill-ins and never outline them. Like in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, like just a fill-in, just boom, like 3 in a row, and you're like, that's like high art or something. Like that's, I don't know. Like,
I would rather look at an MQ fill-in than look at most things, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I love his fill-in so much, and it's like, I don't know, like every time you see him doing it in action, like you said, it's just like
he
high
knows
art.
about placement though. Like he's
Yeah.
really good at like looking at, like if you look at like the old photos of like where he does like back-to-back fill-ins, they're like perfectly spaced apart and perfectly sized. Like he knows about that shit. He like counts his fucking steps, or I don't know, like I've seen him do some shit. Like he knows like where to place things. And he'll just do graffiti, you know, like sometimes it's just a tag on a wall, but it's like placed really well. Like not just like, because that's another cool thing like with tags, like you can kind of see there's emotion or whatever in the tags.
Yeah.
And I nerd out on all the shit because I'm like into like regional graffiti, like Philly graffiti. Like I like get in, like nerd out on that, like not do it, but like Philly sick, like dudes that are like 70 years old painting Philly and bomb. And you're like, wow, that's fucking dope. Like there's like father-son combos, you know, out, and like San Francisco, like the bus hopping, like that's something so regional and it's so weird. Like these dudes like make their own, well, they get old markers, like some of them are like markers from like the 90s, you know, and they make or they find these weird inks, or they make ink that stains like the fucking plastic, or like they just do all this weird shit, and you can't find out about that shit really on the, like that shit's not on the internet, you know. You can get a marker that maybe looks similar, but like it's so weird, it's like amazing. And they're all like, you know, a lot of them are like high school kids, and they have like sick, beefs on there. They like cross each other out a bunch, and like that was something like I love that shit. Like being around, like getting to see that firsthand, just like bus hopping. Like I didn't do a ton of it, but I some of my friends were like bus hoppers, and like just the whole history like on that is like, and it's not very well documented. So it's like for me, that shit's kind of like the best. I don't know. I'm just like, yeah, that's for me. Like graffiti's, I like graffiti. It's like a hobby, but like I don't like care. Like I don't need like up. I'm not like, oh, I need to get up. Like I don't know. I just like to do graffiti, and like, but I'm also way into this. Like I'm into this shit, Like,
yeah.
The fucking history of it, but not like, yeah, it's like my history is skewed. It's not like, oh, like Style Wars, like, and like I know about everything. Like, no, it's just like for some reason, like one thing will catch my eye, and I'm like, oh, I want to find out about that.
Yeah.
So.
Bro, I gotta say, thank you for doing this and letting us in your gigantic spot.
It's not my spot, but it's the zone. Yeah, I don't even know what I said, dude. But, like,
no, it was amazing, yo. I want to say thank you so much, bro.
I just like went on a stoner rant.
Could listen to your stories all day, bro.
Thanks, bro.
Hell yeah.
Peace.